Welcome to Kizuna, a Teijin Innovation Vodcast. Like the Japanese word Kizuna, which means enduring bonds between people, we believe in the power of bringing industry experts together to talk about how to develop the newest technologies of the future. My name is Franziska and I'm an innovation advisor and your host of this podcast. And today we talk about the value chain transparency with Frederik De Breuck, CTO of Fujitsu. With me again, I have Jay Latta, industry expert, innovation technology strategist, fusionist, and expert of so many different topics. Jay, welcome to this episode. How are you today? And what comes to your mind when you think about blockchains, transparency, value chain, and so on?
As first, thank you for having me here once again. I'm doing fine, thank you. What comes into my mind when I hear blockchain as first? In my opinion, they are just something around a handful of use cases where blockchain really makes sense. When we are looking into the whole supply chain, for example, when we are looking into transparency. For transparency, yes, definitely. This is a very important technology when it comes into supply chains, all of this. We might have a very interesting discussion. But in general, of course, it is something that impacts an industry. If we do it in the right way, then it can be very valuable. And I'm very curious to hear Frederik's thoughts on this.
Yeah, let's welcome Frederik. Frederik De Breuck, CTO, Head of Enterprise Blockchain Solution, Innovation Lead at Fujitsu. Frederik, warm welcome to Kizuna, and thank you so much for being here. How are you today? And could you please introduce yourself with a few words?
Okay, thank you for having me. And Jay, what an introduction. Thank you. Well, I'm indeed Frederik De Breuck, working for a very long time for Fujitsu already, 23 years. But I started a bit like in the data center outsourcing space, like a lot of us in the IT services. And then I moved quickly to innovation topics. And one of these topics we started in, I think 2017, is to look at what does it mean and these enterprise blockchains, and not the crypto space, but what does enterprise blockchain can bring to the industry and certainly into ecosystems. And I do agree with Jay, as there is a kind of a thin line between just choosing the technology because it's new and fancy and cool, and using it for real use cases. And that's what we at the center actually look for, is to make sure we have control or understand the methodologies of what makes it successful in value chains. Taking off the name of our podcast today, Kizuna, is looking at what can it bring in that transparency, that immutability, sorry, and also for the need for trusted data in companies. And I think that's one of the key elements we need to have a discussion on today, is data is not the same as trusted data in an ecosystem, because your regulator, your companies, your partners, your consortium, they all are looking for that verification, that trust in, because they're going to base their decisions on it. And I think the keyword of today, or another keyword of today, is decision intelligence. What does it, how can you make sure you can have decision intelligence? And I think that's something I would love to have a discussion on with Jay today.
Jay is smiling. I love that. How can blockchain really support a sustainable value chain? Like, can we really dive deep into it? Maybe, I mean, Jay, maybe you can start, and then let's just have a discussion about it. How, like, the how is really important.
So, Frederik said some very important things. Let me pick on these. Immutability. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I have developed this 5 technological layers model for data dominated businesses. I do not like data driven, because data driven is this huge master with the whip and the slaves simply have to pull. So this means data driven for me. So data dominated. Of course, this is another whip, but whatever. So here it comes into these 5 layers, where the first layer is, of course, data visualization. We are visually oriented beings. We understand with what we see. 93% of our natural compute power comes into processing visual informations. So this is the first layer. The second layer is, of course, data prediction. What you've already said, it's not about just reacting. It's about to predict, to deal with it, to have a glimpse of an idea what might come. The third layer is more or less about data choreography. So how does this data, what does it mean for me? Is it big data? Is it small data? Is it just an Excel sheet? Majority of the German corporates, the most important tool for them is the Excel sheet, period. Here comes, of course, one thing that you've mentioned, very important. Can I trust my data? When we start collecting data, it's already biased. Whoever sets up some kind of initiative to collect data from this moment on, it's biased, because it's based on the goals that I'm following, on my experiences, the expectations. So here some kind of corrective would be needed, some kind of statistical models that help me to mitigate this bias out of my data. The fourth layer is data connectivity. Barely we think about, where does my data come from? Is it replicated data? Is it real-time data? Have I already enriched it? The fifth layer, not unimportant, but as well across this whole cake, is data immutability. Can I trust my data? So here, do I need blockchain? Do I need high-end cryptographic? Do I need whatever? So these 5 layers are for a successful, modern, built, data-dominated business completely inevitable. So here already, Fujitsu, you with your initiative, you touch multiple of these points, which is very important. So here, of course, to deep diving into this is immutability. Majority of the people, especially in corporates, they don't get the idea behind blockchain. Blockchain is not a high-end encrypted environment. It's immutable because of this transparency. That's the thing. Who in the corporate world wants to be transparent? As soon we see this, we simply split. We start to, especially in German corporates, we live this need to know principle. So this means all of my small underlings just get a small piece of information they need to do their task. So here, all of these hierarchies, these, in fact, delegation structures, chains of command, we are doing some kind of small business war and so on. This is what it's based on. Everyone just gets the necessary piece, while what you are describing is in fact a huge revolution in businesses, in economics, where we can flatten these hierarchies, when we start to believe into self-organizing systems, some kind of anarchy. And here we need this immutability through the data, that we can trust this data and then do some more magic. Tell me.
Good one, Jay. It's almost like a philosophy speaking going on, but you do have a few fair points, and it's if you look at companies, they do love to have a certain form of control, and that's absolutely normal. And I think it's always a question of I call it the holy triangle of people, process, and technology. They all have to come together, because if you purely focus on the technology piece to structure your data, it's not going to help if you do not change the people. And I think also in the technology piece, in your layer model you described, which is a very valid view on data, because I often start my speeches with data is useless. And actually, data is useless, because you need to have insight, knowledge, and then go to a decision. And the primary key here is indeed, where does my data come from? Can I trust it? And one important thing in these ecosystems and the user experience and the things we do for our customers and our consumers of what we produce is of course, they want to know. They are stakeholders. They are becoming important in what we do, and that's why we need to really focus on sharing insights and not just sharing big chunks of data. Big data, the data is going to explode in the coming years. Just imagine, we have another project running called Botanical Water, where we have a big container and there's 170 IoT sensors. You don't want to ship that data over. You just want to share the insights. And to pick up on the privacy topic and the little minions that do all the work, I think there's a few technology pieces or insights that can help. There is of course, certainly in bigger ecosystems of companies, you could use technology like zero knowledge proofs to just expose the data you want to expose. You can use technologies like data mesh, data fabrics to connect all these data topics, and that's the whole interesting evolution we see now in data. And I understand the data-driven portion of everything. I get horrible shivers if I see, oh, let's become a data-driven company, because we make the mistake ourselves. It's like, let's do the right thing. Let's do some intelligent stuff. Let's do some stuff with purpose. And Jay, you're absolutely right in allocating your data and making sure, because it's going to become even more important. No company can work alone. And if we see the data and the data governance and the data strategy problem already on a company level, let's imagine what happens if you have, like, for example, the project with V-frames. Let's imagine what happens if you have 10 companies to manage. And then it becomes important to have these technologies that connects the things and that shows to everybody that Franziska, Jay, and Frederik are looking at the same data, because that's where it goes wrong. And that's what Jay also mentions in the trusted and the immutability. Can I trust my data? If my stock level is 15 and Jay sees 10 and Franziska sees 5, you take the wrong decision. Huh? And that's what the technology like ledger, we call it often distributed ledgers. You can call it blockchain, you can call it whatever you want. It's just technology that helps you making sure that you understand what happens with the data. It doesn't prove the data. You can put wrong stuff on it, but it will still prove that we are all looking at the same wrong stuff. And that's where this comes into play in that ecosystem thinking. And I think we see that happening in the economy too. And it's something we need to really prepare for as companies, and not just Teijin or Fujitsu or anybody. The whole, let's say, society as a word that is hanging there.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's talk about the circular economy a little bit more, and maybe for our audience, just like really break it down, like what is the greatest potential here, when using blockchain in this regard? Do you have some examples that you can share with us? I mean, you already said the V-frames, but let's, go on this like a little bit later. But I want you just like, what's the greatest potential when it comes to the circular economy? And Jay and me, we talked about it a lot like before. But yeah, what's your perspective?
I think for me, circularity is also about we need to take as a collective group of people. The circularity will not start with individuals. It would start with kind of a group effort or society that really makes a change. And we see some pretty good examples. And I'll use one of the examples of a project we did called Text Tracer, and it's still in production, so it's running, where we do the traceability of cotton production and cotton T-shirts. And apparently it takes 16 supply chain partners to produce a T-shirt. And that traceability and fair trade, and there's a number of traces we want to bring, because this textile industry is really hit by the whole greenwashing and the problems that we have seen in statements on we are ESG, we are sustainable, we are this, and that's something we really need to take into account. And within the project, we started discussing also with the CEO of the company on, okay, why don't we include also refurbishment, recycling, and all of this, because
Yes.
we see that products are becoming almost a second life, a third life, and we see a lot of evolution within products, and it's that kind of circular thinking, because we can all draw a little diagram of what does it mean circularity, but it's also about society, companies, groups of companies starting to think, okay, what can I do? I think circularity has also an important effect on product design. I think if you look at today, it's not just about the consumable goods and the goods we produce and that can then be recycled or refurbished or reused. I think circularity will really start if enterprises make the conscious decisions to design for circularity. And I think that's an important piece. I often see that, and it's still a bit difficult, but the car manufacturers, they start to put elements in their products that are designed for circularity. I think in food you can do it, in packaging you can do it if you design it for circularity. And to keep plastic out of the world, the best plastic is the one that you don't produce. It's as simple as it is. But if you then still use it, let's design it that we can quickly reuse it without energy overhead or additional effort or whatsoever. So I think the whole notion of design thinking and it should infuse our thinking. Sustainability is not something you verify, it's something you are. And if companies start to understand that you have to be a sustainable company, and it has to be almost part of your core business model, and it doesn't have to be the C-level that gets rewarded for being sustainable because the tick in the box. It is up to the shop floor to really understand, okay, if I design this fiber, if I design this element, how can I make it sustainable and circular? However, reflection point, and I know there's a lot, that lonely farmer that does the core of the production, or the small producing unit, or it's difficult to get them on board. And that's also where you have let's say earn back mechanisms, make them part of that value chain. And we did some projects around circularity with coffee production and all these things, and it's you have to have your whole value chain with you. And that's the most difficult part, I think, in design.
Yeah, I really like what you said, because like when we like at Kizuna, we always, try to bring it back to the human, but it's really like we need to embody being really like sustainable. It doesn't end, no matter in what high performing job, we're working in, it's like it's already present, it's like that's the thing, and yeah, Jay, maybe your thoughts to circular economy and blockchain. What's the greatest potential here?
So many things to say, and we don't have the time. Frederik, it's really a pleasure, because you are constantly saying the right things. Not just saying. I'm pretty sure you as well do them. So starting with, it's a community. It's we. It's not. I mean, I can spin around and pretend to be circular alone. I'm just the one thing that spins. Here, to escape this linear economy, how we do it right now, producing waste, automotive industry, micro polluters. It's very interesting what you've said, because here, this way, away from the linear society, leading through this linear economy, circular economy, towards a circular society, when everyone is part of this, when we, in a transparent way, know what the others do without blaming them, simply to adapt on them. And this is, I would say, one of the most important parts, to experience this as a together, not as a me, what's in for me. and misusing this. So here, one of the core aspects in this mindset change is really to use it at its best. So leaving competition, going towards collaboration, cooperation. So this is the whole idea behind circularity. There was a top level manager, part of the board members in one of these German companies, huge companies. He proposed some years ago to the other board members, to the shareholders, what if the CEO would sign multiple contracts? When he comes into his position, he gets multiple contracts. The first contract would be with the employees, that I make sure that you love your job, that you are appreciated, that we are in an open environment, not in these atmospheres of fear. So really taking care, responsibility, he versus these stakeholders. The second contract should have been with the customers. I make sure I am responsible that our products do not harm, that you enjoy our products, that, and so on and so on. The third contract should have been with the planet Earth, the fourth contract with, and so on and so on. In total, 5 contracts, something extremely advanced. Of course, it failed. He's not in his position anymore. But here in 2018, I think it was, where this business club in US, 180 CEOs signed this commitment to go away from shareholder orientation towards a stakeholder orientation. Even if it's just paper, it was a first important peak to show we are reaching our limits. We need to go into something different. Circularity is very important. If we are looking, for example, in 2018, as well in 2018, there was this kind of prognosis and so on, statistical models that have proven that if we don't change this 1.5 degrees heating up and so on by something between 2030, 2035, right now we already heated up 1.1 degrees. So it's just a small glimpse that we are really reaching these tipping points. So again, circularity, we together. We see currently a huge discussion in these me. I want my e-fuels. I want my combustion engines. I do not want to leave them by 2035. I need this and that and so on, which is completely wrong. So this linearity, some kind of egoistic approach towards a we together. So here, of course, blockchain. If we do it in the right way, and in the right way would mean not or barely these closed environments of corporate chains where only the corporate has the ownership of everything and stays intransparent. So opening up, really keeping the secret sauce for you. Everything else simply make transparent. Why is this important for the circularity especially? It's important to see me as a small business. For me, a valuable resource can be something, what is, let's say, for Fujitsu, for Teijin, waste. They don't need it, but I can have it. And here again, Kizuna, Motanai, Kintsugi, using in the circularity something that someone does not use to reuse it as a valuable resource. This is, for example, one of the things that might be very important use case in blockchain, this transparency, so that we all know where does it go, where is this flow, where can I contribute on this, where can I become part of this overall spinning small wheels in this huge machinery called planet Earth.
Yeah. And if I may, Jay, an interesting thinking. And I understand that that's the goal where we need to go as a society. And what I did learn, and one of the things is, and of course we hit the wall too, is what does it take to make that successful? And it's a combination of technology, changing of your processes, changing of your fabric of who you are, but it also takes a reflection on human psychology. And if I'm honest, and if people are scared of something called, in Japanese we say kaikaku, the radical change, and versus the gradual change. And if you want to change organizations and the social systems, and that's why for me a lot of the work we do is almost like questioning the social orthodoxies that exist in society, and it's asking, are we doing the right thing? And what I noticed is, if we cannot clearly explain to what's in it for you as a person, what's in it for you as an individual, why would you contribute? And some people respond to elements like gamification. Other people respond to earn back mechanisms. And I think I understand your point of the openness of the blockchain and open data and open telemetry and all these things. I think the road to get there, for me, is probably the road through interoperability. We might have a lot of private connected chains. We might have lots of data pools, data lakes. And for me, even there blockchain can play, because you need to interconnect all these systems. We cannot do anything alone anymore. You have ecosystems, well connected ecosystems, and that's it. Because the notion of we can do the big change in one go, I think, has already proven in the past to fail. So planning for failure is not an option I like to go for. So I prefer to say, okay, let's find a way. And because one of the key elements of the approach that Fujitsu often takes, and what we also took in the project with Teijin, is to look at, let's make sure we understand what are we going to do together and why, and then only start in the how. And because it's 80% of what we are doing is a discussion on, okay, how can we make it better? And only 20% is pure technology. For the technology piece, we can find solutions. That's fine. We can AI analytics, we can combine it, we can drop it on a blockchain, we can automate the hell out of it. And there are technologies these days that allow you to do that. But there's still some people behind the buttons that says, okay, this is how we now gonna do it. And what we see as these projects often fail, it's one, the not invented here syndrome. As Jay also said, hey, guys, let's look, hey, this is my data, you cannot touch it. And the other element is, of course, they are protective. And people do not understand, people get protective because they do not understand what's in it for them.
It's like
and once they understand that, you can also try to change their root cause thinking and saying, your product, if you change the design of your product from the beginning, you might not end up with the complexity of fixing the waste problem in the end. And then that's something I often think about, and it's also a discussion we have in our design thinking workshops with customers, and say, okay, guys, is this now the right way to do this? And it's all about asking the right questions. And people do get defensive. You have to prepare for that in these things.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point, and I think people underestimate that, not only corporates but in general, also like maybe in startups, And I think it's very typical for humans that we rather stay in an uncomfortable space ecosystem, that we know how it works.
We call it limbo.
Limbo, then going into the unknown, because the unknown is like, we don't know, is there pain, whatever, like do we have to make compromises? I think that's very interesting. Jay, do you wanna add something to that?
So many things. No, I completely get it. I mean, my experience in industries in general is we make multiple mistakes. Designing for failure is not always bad, because one of the core mistakes that we make in our corporates, and as well startups that want to become the next unicorn, whatever. I mean, every big company was more or less once a startup. We just didn't call it a startup. They started small. Now they are so big. They are so depending on their products, so they cannot change. I understand this. The thing is, we are so oriented around this golden calf to dance around it, that profitability made something our companies are ruled by controllers and accountants. We have completely lost the focus. And this huge thing about we need to grow, this eternal grow, this our solution has to become a benchmark. So we are constantly designing our products for one size fits all. I want the biggest piece of the cake, which is complete, sorry to say, I know we are recording, BS. It's nonsense. In north of Europe, you need a different approach, let's say, on mobility, on architecture, than in south of Europe. It might not work in Dubai or in Texas or in Japan. So here, having modular approaches, ecosystemic thinking, that I can simply put them together and not to see, hey, what if in this area, I'm not the one who makes everything fine, but the ecosystem that I help to create, where this one puzzle piece, which I am right now, I will be somewhere else of help, and I simply replace it. I help to replace it to bring the biggest impact. So here simply to overcome our egos, to overcome this kind of, wow, I'm so innovative that my crappy software is part of everything. This is toxic. This is where it simply stops working, because then I'm trying to stay in this defense. I'm trying simply to grab, to put my claws into everything, not to lose any kind of direction. So what we, Frederik, completely with you, what we should rather focus on is to build alternatives that are so sexy that it simply doesn't make sense to waste your time with what we've done all the time. Where these new things are more pleasing, where they bring you purpose, pleasure, passion, where you simply can have this alternative and it makes you not just successful, but at the end, you love what you do. So here, gamification, yes, is one very important part, because it reminds us on how we've been as children, where we've not been so ego-driven, where we've been part of a community playing together, not alone somewhere in the corner.
And where learning from each other is so important and crucial to survive. Actually, that's also interesting. I want to look at the V-frames, and that's the exciting bit here in a video podcast, that we actually can look at visuals. Shall we look at it? And Frederik, can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Well, the V-frame project is a very interesting project, of course, and I'm not extremely deeply involved in it, but I do. It's my team that is working on it. We do have hundreds of projects across the globe, so I try to stay informed as much as I can. But I think there's a number of Teijin people that know a lot more about it going forward. But it's certainly interesting because on its own, companies like Fujitsu and Teijin, they are ecosystems. They have supply chain partners, they have value chain partners. And for those in the audience that do not understand the difference between value chain and supply chain, value chain is the end-to-end. Also your upstream and your downstream. Upstream means the suppliers that come to you. Downstream means your consumers of what you have produced. That's the simple definition. And in essence, supply chain is always part of your value chain. It's what comes to you. So and here we have of course V-frames is producing those amazing frames, let's call it, but also there we want to know where it goes, where it is consumed, and how can it in the future be recycled. And of course we started the project relatively with a few steps in the process to make sure it works. And that's also how we tend to do projects, is to say, well, let's find a case where we can really apply it, test it, and then scale it. And I think that's one of the things where Jay also refers to is let's find something that works and then explode it, scale it, make it bigger. And of course, what you want to do in your and it's a big word, and there's all I think we can do another podcast, and it's you want to have a digital representative of what it means to be a frame. and the components of your frame and the attributes you have in a frame, and how do they go through their life cycle. And I think the understanding of life cycles of what we produce is, of course, the most important thing. And if you look at, and I think it's also a problem, Jay, we need to have a reflection on is how can I make sure that what happens in the real world has a correct duplicate in the digital space, and that's for that's for a fiber, that's for a V-frame, that's for a supply chain part, that's for your data, and your blockchain piece will ensure that what you put on cannot be contested. It is an evidence, an immutable thing of where is that frame, where is that component of that frame, and where is it located, and who has done what with which element of it. And that's a bit kind of also, and in the end, you would also be able to produce or produce data reports that will allow you to report to the regulator, I have recycled X amount of fibers or X amount of elements of this frame towards your, let's say, regulator or your official reporting, because that's one of the big stakeholders. And people think only people are stakeholders. Well, governments are a few of the biggest stakeholders we see. And because if you certainly look in Europe, there is going to be a significant regulation coming up that you have to report on your non-financial standards and reports. We all have to report our financial stuff. Well, our non-financial stuff, how are we sustainable? How are we? What's the materiality of all the stuff you do? That's going to be part of your official reporting, because that's possibly also the future of taxation or accounting. If you look at how much energy or how much elements are used, it's something that's going to be part of the taxation system of the future. We see a lot of elements and research on that, and all the work we do, including with V-frames, is to prepare for these kinds of elements, because it's going to come anyway. I hope that as a light touch intro, that's okay. And I know that the recycling of bicycle frames is just one example, because I know Teijin and other companies, you do a lot of elements, but this is kind of a case that can prove that it works, and then scale it out.
Yeah, we should do another episode about this as well. And also, like, if people have questions, we also have the future navigation platform where they can reach out to us. So thank you so much for explaining, Frederik. Jay, what are your thoughts on this project?
So one very important thing in this value chain transparency, documentation, sharing, and so on, comes from two perspectives into my mind. As first, if we also know what the life cycle is, how the product, how the elements, part of this product are being used from the customers after how I've designed it. If I can get these informations, I can learn about the usage of this product. I can maybe offer a deeper, let's say, modularity of my product, so that my customers can more likely simply get my product because it's usable on multiple levels, which might have, as the second stream as well, an effect on the taxation. If I can prove that my product is used in a sustainable way, that it's not being thrown away, but some elements are being simply reused again and again and again, it might have, from the regulatory and from the taxation perspective as well, the element that me as a company will get a discount, because my impact on this planet, on this overall value chain, is simply so sustainable that I will be rewarded for this kind of eco-design, bio-design, and so on.
Yeah. We are almost at the end of the episode, but we always like end the question or end the episode with this question: how do you envision the future, Frederik? And this can be very like personal, but let's also stay with the topic. How do you envision blockchain, value chains, the future in 2050?
Well, 2050, then I'll be 80. No, it's okay.
How old am I? I never thought about that actually.
Yeah,
How old am I?
well, I remember my first job. I entered the company, and they said actually I started with Siemens, and then a long time ago, and on my personnel card there was written valid till 2037, because that was my retirement age. So that's just an anecdote. I still have the card, by the way, just as a memory. No, but the future, I think we can still change now, and people tend to be a bit narcissistic and a bit egocentric, and I think there's a lot of power of belief in the younger generation, and of course, I think they are the future. It's almost like a speech I'm gonna do, but no, they are the future, and they have a different belief. And they come from for interesting projects. They did start to do these things with insight, with passion. And do they make mistakes of shouting on the barricades and not in instigating real change? Yes, but then it's up to the, let's say, slightly older people like Jay and myself to tend to inspire and bring them down to a level. Let's get it implemented, huh? Because it's up to the young people to keep us sharp, and but to make it a real fundamental change, we need to act as a collective. And I think that collective thinking, and I don't mean in any political way whatsoever, but also companies are collectives. Companies are ecosystem, and collective thinking. That's the only true change that's going to come. And to be brutal, I think sometimes politics sits a little bit in a way, because they are typically in a reactive mode. They're only going to enforce regulations to in after the facts often. I think if you have a political framework, and I see positive effects, of course, in Europe, with the Green Deal and this, the data strategy that the European Commission is doing. I see a lot of positive. I see some nice things in Japan too. I think that framework where we as ecosystem, as stakeholders, as companies and society can collaborate and get to something more realistic. I think if the political environment sets us a frame where we can operate it instead of discussing it, and the big philosopher Yoda said, there is no try, just do. And actually, that's the whole point. We're now at that switch point of, let's stop debating, let's just do stuff. And that's also the mindset of why we do this in the center. We always focused in the blockchain center. I mean, we always focused on doing things with a purpose, making sure it really tends to inspire, and because on our own projects it will not make a dent in whatever we do, but at least we get that road started. And 2050 for me still looks bright, to be honest. Let me stop with that. For me it still looks bright. Will I still be there? I don't know, let's hope so. But I think it still looks bright. Certainly, if you see the initiatives of companies like Teijin and also our own company, we see a lot of mindset change. And I think that's the first big step. And now we have to go in that do mode.
Mm. Yeah, and if we make mistakes, I think it's not a problem. I feel like sometimes
No.
we are like, oh, we made so many mistakes in the past, and now we have to be sustainable. Like it's okay to make mistakes, but I think the doing is so important to learn, to be better, to improve. Not only technologies, but like in total, all the systems that we are living in. Jay, what's your vision, especially with this topic in 2050?
Yeah. So as first concerning the mistakes, yes, you are right, Franziska. We tend to, mistakes are okay if I learn out of them. Mostly it's being done that we repeat mistakes and ignore the wrong outcome. It's like always being surprised. Oh, damn it. We've done this already 20 years ago. Now it again failed, and it will fail again. So here, my hope is, right now, that we start understanding that the new generation that is right now drives us with the whip, that they are not just the ones who are loud now. They are as well the customers of the future. They are the employees of the future. So here it's simply one of the core necessities to change our mindset, to adapt on their needs as well. When I look into 2050, honestly, I'm still very positive. I believe that we will have self-organizing structures. In my opinion, if we could, when we started talking about politics, it's as well bureaucracy. If we could replace majority of them with algorithms, it might be better than what we have right now. I believe that all of these bigger companies will sooner or later simply start to be deconstructed into small units that are acting together. So following this community thinking, where they simply see themselves as a valuable part of something, but do not be really this one whatever that needs to move, become the one monopolist and so on. So in my opinion, self-organizing units, something a little bit more anarchical. Anarchy does not mean chaos. This is what people mostly misinterpret, what they don't understand. I call myself, when I've been asked, Jay, what are you in your political beliefs? I call myself an anarchistic hedonist. So I don't believe into these hierarchies, into all of this stuff. I believe strongly into self-organizing structures. So really here, if we can learn, if we unlearn the past and relearn the new, then we are prepared for the future where everyone can contribute. So circularity means, as first, self-organizing systems, people that feel responsible, people that simply act with each other and not against each other. In my opinion, we will achieve this. I see tendencies where we are on the right path. There are still these loud people that want to preserve, that want to keep something. One anecdote, if you think about it, superhero movies.
I love
The
it.
superheroes are mostly the ones who want to preserve, who want to keep the old, while the supervillains are the ones who want change. These are my last words for now.
Is Jay a super villain?
Yeah, I love when we go in this angle, with sci-fi and heroes and villains and yeah.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Or is it Jay flying by?
Both of you, thank you so much for this very interesting conversation about value change, sustainability, blockchain, and so much more. If you, the listener, the audience, want to reach out to us, you can do this on the Future Navigation platform. I wish you a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Frederik De Breuck. That was really, really cool. Jay Latta, amazing as always. And yeah, have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you.